Marcus Brown had always dreamed of owning a peaceful home away from the city noise. After years of saving from his job as an electrician, he finally bought a small but beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood called Pine Hill Estates. The houses were neat, lawns trimmed, and birds often sang in the tall oak trees that lined the streets. To Marcus, this place felt like the start of a new chapter in his life. He moved in during early spring. The sun was bright, the air smelled fresh, and he was filled with hope. He waved to a few neighbors while unloading his truck. Most of them smiled and waved back. A few even came over to greet him, bringing small gifts or offering to help. Everything seemed good until he noticed one woman standing across the street, watching him closely. Her name was Karen Miller. Everyone in the neighborhood knew her. She was the head of the HOA and liked to remind everyone of that fact. She was known for sending warning letters about lawn height, mailbox color, and parking times. Most neighbors avoided arguing with her because it was never worth the stress. Marcus tried to be friendly. On his second day, he walked over to say hello. "Good morning," he said with a warm smile. "I just moved in across the street." "I'm Marcus." Karen gave a tight smile but didn't extend her hand. "Oh, you're the new homeowner. We have very strict rules here in Pine Hill Estates. I hope you read the HOA manual." Marcus nodded politely. "Yes, I've looked through it. I'll make sure to follow everything." Karen glanced at his truck. "We don't allow large vehicles parked outside overnight, and noise should be kept low after 9 in the evening." Marcus kept his tone calm. "Understood." Without another word, Karen turned and walked back into her house. Her son Brad was sitting on the porch wearing headphones and scrolling on his phone. He barely noticed the conversation. Marcus simply shrugged and went back to work unpacking. During his first week, Marcus spent time fixing small things around his house. He planted flowers near the mailbox, cleaned the porch, and replaced a broken fence board. He felt proud of his progress, but he began to notice something odd. Whenever he left the house, Karen would peek through her blinds. If he parked his car slightly off the driveway, she would come out and take a photo. Sometimes she stood outside pretending to water her plants while staring at him. Marcus found it strange but chose not to let it bother him. He had dealt with worse attitudes before and knew that peace was more valuable than arguing. Then small problems began to happen. One afternoon, Marcus ordered a set of tools for his work. The delivery company sent a message saying the package had been delivered, but when he checked his porch, it was gone. At first he thought maybe it was a mistake, so he called customer service and they agreed to resend it. The second package arrived a few days later, but the same thing happened again. The delivery photo showed it had been left on his porch, but when Marcus came home from work, it had disappeared. He decided to pay closer attention. The next time he ordered something, he made sure to come home early. From his window, he saw the delivery man place a small box near the door. 10 minutes later, someone walked across his yard quietly. It was Brad, Karen's son. Marcus watched as Brad looked around and then picked up the box before running back toward his house. Marcus was disappointed, but not surprised. He had heard a few neighbors complain about Brad's behavior. Some said he hung out with a group that caused small problems in the area. Others said Karen always defended him no matter what he did. Instead of confronting Brad right away, Marcus decided to be smart. The next morning, he bought a small security camera and placed it above his porch. He didn't tell anyone about it. He just wanted proof in case it happened again. Sure enough, only 2 days later, another package went missing. Marcus checked the camera footage that night. The video showed Brad once again sneaking up to the porch, glancing around, and taking the box. The image was clear enough that there was no doubt. Marcus thought for a long time about what to do. He didn't want trouble. He believed in handling things calmly. So instead of calling the police right away, he decided to report it to the HOA board during their monthly meeting. After all, Karen was always talking about community rules and respect for property. The meeting was held at the community hall on Saturday morning. Marcus walked in with his phone, ready to show the video if needed. About 20 residents were seated in rows, chatting quietly. Karen sat at the front table with a few other HOA members. She smiled proudly as she called the meeting to order, her voice sharp and commanding. "Welcome, everyone," she said. "We're here to discuss upcoming maintenance fees, lawn inspections, and community safety. If anyone has issues to raise, we'll address them one by one." When it was time for open discussion, Marcus raised his hand. Karen looked at him, clearly surprised. Yes, Mr. Brown, you're new here, aren't you? Yes, I moved in last month, Marcus said politely. I'd like to report something. I've had 3 packages disappear from my porch. I recently set up a camera to see what was happening. I'd like to show the video so everyone can be aware. Karen's expression changed slightly, but she forced a smile. Of course, we take security very seriously. Go ahead. Marcus connected his phone to the small screen at the front of the room. The video started playing. It showed Brad walking up to his porch, looking around nervously, then picking up a package and leaving. The date and time were clear in the corner of the video. The room fell silent. Several neighbors leaned forward, whispering to each other. Karen's face turned pale. Her eyes widened as she saw her son's face on the screen. Brad, sitting in the back, lowered his head immediately. Karen stammered, "That could be anyone." "The quality is poor." Marcus stayed calm. "It's your son, ma'am. I'm not here to embarrass anyone. I just want this kind of thing to stop." One of the HOA members spoke up. "Karen, that does look like Brad. Maybe we should discuss how to handle this." Karen snapped, "My son would never steal. There must be some mistake." But everyone in the room had seen the video clearly. The evidence was undeniable. Marcus didn't raise his voice or argue. He simply turned off the video and said, "I'm not asking for punishment. I just want honesty and respect. If he returns what he took, I'll let it go." Karen's hand shook as she gathered her papers. "This meeting is over," she said quickly. She avoided everyone's eyes and hurried out of the hall, pulling Brad by the arm. The other neighbors whispered among themselves. Many of them were tired of Karen's behavior. She had always acted like she was above everyone else, enforcing rules that she often broke herself. Seeing her son caught like that made people question everything she said before. Marcus went home quietly, feeling a mix of relief and concern. He didn't want to make enemies, but he believed in standing up for himself. He thought maybe this would finally make Karen and Brad leave him alone. That night, as he sat on his porch with a cup of tea, he noticed Karen's house across the street. The curtains were shut and no lights were on. Everything looked quiet. But Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that Karen wasn't done yet. The next morning, his feeling proved right. Marcus woke up to the sound of loud knocking on his door. When he opened it, 2 police officers were standing there. "Are you Marcus Brown?" one of them asked. "Yes, that's me," Marcus said, confused. "We received a call about a disturbance and possible harassment of a local family," the officer said. Marcus frowned. "Harassment? I haven't done anything wrong." Before he could say more, Karen appeared from across the street, pointing toward him. "That's him. He's been stalking my son and recording our home without permission." Marcus's heart sank. He realized what she was doing. She was trying to turn the tables after being embarrassed in front of everyone. The officers looked uncertain. "Ma'am, we'll handle this," one said to Karen. Marcus took a deep breath. "Officers, I have video proof of theft on my property. That's why I have the camera. Would you like to see it?" The officers exchanged glances. One of them nodded. "Yes, please show us." Marcus invited them inside and played the same video he had shown at the HOA meeting. The officers watched silently. When the video ended, one officer turned to Karen. "Ma'am, it looks like your son was taking property that didn't belong to him. This man is not in the wrong." Karen's face turned red. "That's not true. That video could be edited." But the officer shook his head. "The evidence is clear. Please go back to your home, ma'am. We'll be making a report." Karen was speechless. She turned and stormed back across the street without another word. Marcus thanked the officers and closed the door. He sat down, trying to calm himself. He knew this wasn't over. People like Karen didn't give up easily. Across the street, behind the curtains, Karen's angry voice could be heard yelling at her son. Brad mumbled something, but she cut him off. Marcus couldn't hear the words, but he knew one thing for sure. Karen was planning something, and whatever it was going to be worse than before. The morning after the police visit, the whole neighborhood seemed to buzz with quiet whispers. Word spread quickly in Pine Hill Estates. Everyone knew that Karen had called the police on Marcus, and everyone also knew the truth about her son. Some neighbors felt sorry for Marcus, while others kept their distance, afraid of getting involved. Marcus tried to continue his life as normal. He went to work, fixed things in his yard, and greeted people politely. But he could feel eyes on him wherever he went. Some neighbors smiled awkwardly, unsure what to say. Others simply waved from a distance. The calm he had hoped for when he moved into this neighborhood now felt far away. Across the street, Karen stayed inside most of the time. Her curtains were always drawn. Sometimes Marcus saw her peeking through them when he went out to check his mail. Brad rarely came outside either. The few times Marcus saw him, the young man avoided eye contact and hurried away. Marcus thought maybe things would quiet down with time. But a few days later, strange things started to happen again. It began with a small note left on his car windshield. The note said, "You don't belong here. Leave before it gets worse." There was no name or signature. Marcus read the note slowly and folded it in his hand. His heart was heavy, but he refused to be scared. He knew who was behind it. That evening, Marcus went to speak with one of the HOA board members, Mr. Lewis, who lived 2 streets away. Mr. Lewis was an older man, calm and fair-minded. He had been one of the few people who spoke up during the HOA meeting when the video was shown. Marcus knocked on his door, and Mr. Lewis welcomed him warmly. "Come in, son. I heard about what happened with the police. You handled that very well." "Thank you, sir," Marcus said, "but I think Karen isn't done. I found this note today." He handed the note to Mr. Lewis. The old man frowned. "This is serious. You should keep this for record. Don't throw it away. I'll talk to the rest of the board about this." "I just want peace," Marcus said quietly. "I came here to live a simple life. I don't want trouble with anyone." Mr. Lewis nodded. "I understand. But sometimes people like Karen create their own problems. She's been acting like she owns the whole neighborhood for years. Maybe this time she's gone too far." Marcus thanked him and went back home. He felt a little better knowing someone believed him. But the next few days were no easier. Karen began spreading rumors. She told her close neighbors that Marcus had edited the video to make her son look guilty. She claimed he was spying on her house. She even told some people that Marcus had threatened her family. None of it was true, but some people started to whisper. Marcus noticed fewer neighbors talking to him. The ones who used to wave now pretended not to see him. When he walked his dog, he could hear faint conversations stopping when he passed by. One afternoon, Marcus received a letter in his mailbox. It was from the HOA office. The letter claimed that Marcus had violated neighborhood rules by installing unauthorized surveillance equipment. It said he needed to remove his porch camera within 7 days or face a fine. Marcus sighed when he read it. He knew who had written that complaint. It had Karen's fingerprints all over it. He decided to respond the right way. He wrote a short letter back, stating that the camera was installed for safety after repeated thefts, and that it only covered his own property. He attached a copy of the police report confirming the theft. Then he delivered the letter directly to the HOA office. The next morning, he saw Karen outside watering her garden. She gave him a cold look. Marcus didn't say anything. He was tired of arguing, but Karen wasn't. Later that day, Marcus heard knocking at his door again. When he opened it, he saw Karen standing there with a clipboard in her hand. "I received your response," she said, her tone sharp. "But the HOA still has the right to enforce rules about surveillance equipment. You'll need to take that camera down." Marcus stayed calm. "My camera is for my own safety and it follows the rules. It's not pointed at your property. The police have already seen it." Karen crossed her arms. "You think you can just come here and make your own rules. People like you think they can do whatever they want, but this neighborhood has standards." Marcus looked her in the eye. "All I've done is protect my home. I don't bother anyone." Karen's face tightened with anger. "You embarrassed my son in front of everyone. Do you think that was fair?" "He stole from me," Marcus said simply. "All I did was tell the truth." Karen's lips trembled. "You'll regret this." She turned and stormed away, slamming her gate behind her. That night, Marcus sat quietly in his living room. He could feel the tension growing. He tried to focus on reading or watching television, but something about Karen's tone stayed in his mind. He knew she was angry, and angry people did foolish things. Around midnight, Marcus heard a sound outside his window. It was faint, but clear enough to make him alert. He turned off his lights and peeked through the blinds. There was movement near his car. Someone was standing by the side of it, holding something shiny. Marcus stepped outside quickly. "Who's there?" he called. The figure jumped and ran. Marcus caught a glimpse of Brad running down the street. When he reached his car, he saw that someone had scratched the side with a sharp object. His heart sank. He called the police again. When they arrived, he showed them the damage and told them what he saw. They made another report but said they couldn't do much without solid proof. Marcus decided to check his camera footage once again. Sure enough, the video showed Brad walking up to the car and dragging a metal key along the side before running away. Marcus gave the footage to the police. They said they would contact Brad and his mother for questioning. The next day, everyone in the neighborhood saw the police car stop in front of Karen's house. The officers talked to her for a while. Karen looked furious, her voice loud enough that people across the street could hear her shouting. Brad stood near the doorway, looking embarrassed. When the police left, Karen glared across the street toward Marcus's house. Her face was red and her jaw was tight. That evening, she went to the HOA office again. She filed another complaint against Marcus, this time claiming he was creating a hostile environment. She told the board that Marcus had been harassing her family and damaging community peace. But this time, things didn't go as she planned. The HOA members had already seen too much. Mr. Lewis and two others refused to support her complaint. They reminded her that she had been warned before about spreading false accusations. Karen's temper got the better of her. She shouted at them, saying they were taking sides. But the board reminded her that Marcus had done nothing wrong. When she stormed out, she found several neighbors watching from a distance. Her reputation was falling apart. Meanwhile, Marcus continued to stay calm. He didn't argue with anyone. He focused on his work and took care of his home. He even helped an elderly neighbor fix a leaking pipe one afternoon. Slowly, some neighbors began to see who he really was. But Karen's anger only grew. That night, she paced around her kitchen, speaking to Brad in a low voice. "He's ruining everything. Everyone thinks we're the problem now. Do you know what this means for us?" Brad looked uncomfortable. "Mom, maybe we should just stop. I messed up. He caught me. Maybe we should let it go." Karen shook her head. "No, he's making us look like fools. I won't let him win. I'll show everyone who the real troublemaker is." The next morning, she came up with a plan. She decided to record Marcus, hoping to twist something he said or did into proof of harassment. She stood outside her house pretending to clean, while secretly holding her phone camera pointed toward him. But Marcus ignored her completely, giving her nothing to use. Frustrated, she tried another trick. She sent anonymous complaints to the HOA about noise, uncut grass, and improper parking. Each time, HOA members visited Marcus's property, and each time they found nothing wrong. It went on for days. Karen grew more desperate, her frustration turning into obsession. Then came the day that changed everything. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, Marcus was washing his car in his driveway. He wore headphones and hummed softly to himself. Brad walked past on the sidewalk, kicking a small stone. Marcus nodded politely, hoping to avoid any tension. Brad stopped for a moment. "Hey, man," he said awkwardly. "Look, I'm sorry for what happened before. My mom is still upset, but I shouldn't have taken your stuff." Marcus paused and looked at him. He could see the guilt on the young man's face. "Thank you for saying that," Marcus replied kindly. "I appreciate it. I hope you'll do better from now on." Brad nodded. "Yes, and I'm trying." As they talked, Karen stepped out of her house and saw them. Her face turned bright red. She shouted, "Brad, get away from him!" Brad looked confused. "Mom, I was just talking." Karen stormed down the driveway. "Don't you dare speak to him. He's manipulating you." Marcus stepped back. "Ma'am, we were just having a peaceful conversation." Karen's voice grew louder. "You're harassing my son again. I told you to stay away from us." Marcus sighed. "I didn't do anything wrong." Karen pulled out her phone. "That's it. I'm calling the police again. This time you'll be arrested." Marcus couldn't believe it. "For what?" "Talking." But she had already dialed. "Hello, officer." "Yes, it's me again. The same man is threatening my son right now. Please come quickly." Brad stood frozen. "Mom, stop it." "He didn't do anything." Karen ignored him. Within minutes, a patrol car appeared. The same officers from before stepped out. The neighborhood was never the same after that second police call. People were tired of the drama. Some avoided Karen's house completely. Others began greeting Marcus more openly, finally realizing who was right and who was wrong. But Karen could not accept it. In her mind, she was the victim. She believed Marcus had ruined her life, her reputation, and her control over the neighborhood. Every time she saw him smiling or talking to a neighbor, her anger grew stronger. She sat by her window most days watching him. She told herself he was pretending to be innocent. She thought if she waited long enough he would make a mistake and she would have proof that he was the problem. Brad, on the other hand, wanted peace. He had stopped going out with his friends and started working part-time at a small hardware store nearby. He wanted to fix his image and learn responsibility. He even tried to convince his mother to stop fighting. "Mom, it's over," he said one evening while they were having dinner. "The neighbors don't want to hear about it anymore." "I was wrong. Let's just move on." Karen shook her head quickly. "No, Brad, you don't understand. People are judging us. They whisper when I walk outside. I can feel it. They think we are criminals because of that man," Brad sighed. "It's not because of him, Mom, it's because of what I did. I should apologize to him again." Karen slammed her fork on the table. "You will do no such thing. You don't talk to him again, ever." Brad stayed quiet. He knew arguing would only make things worse. The next morning, Karen walked to the HOA office again. The members looked tired when they saw her coming. Mr. Lewis greeted her with a polite nod. "Good morning, Karen. What can we do for you?" Karen placed a file on the table. "I'm filing another complaint about Marcus Brown. He continues to disturb the peace. He walks around the neighborhood taking photos and talking to people about me." Mr. Lewis sighed. "Karen, we've checked before. He's not breaking any rule. He has every right to walk in the neighborhood. He's not the problem here." Karen crossed her arms. "You're taking his side." "You always do." "No, we're being fair," said another board member. "He's a respectful man. He's even helped a few of our older residents. We've seen no trouble from him." Karen's voice rose. "You're blind. He's manipulative. He's trying to turn everyone against me." Mr. Lewis stayed calm. "Karen, maybe it's time to let this go. The community is tired of this conflict. It's not healthy for anyone." Karen glared at him and grabbed her file. "You'll regret ignoring this. Don't come to me later when he causes real problems." She stormed out of the office, leaving everyone silent. That night she sat at her desk, scrolling through social media. She saw posts from neighbors about how nice Marcus was. One photo showed him fixing a neighbor's mailbox with a friendly smile. People had commented thanking him for helping. Karen felt her stomach twist. She muttered to herself, "They're all fooled. He's doing this to make me look bad." Her anger turned into obsession. She began writing notes about Marcus's daily activities. When he left for work, when he returned, when he watered his plants, when he talked to someone. She filled a notebook with details, convinced she was collecting evidence. Days turned into weeks. Marcus noticed her strange behavior, but stayed silent. He didn't want to give her more reasons to cause trouble. He focused on his work and kept his property neat. He tried to enjoy his evenings, but there was always that feeling of being watched. One Friday evening, Marcus invited a few neighbors over for a small barbecue. It was a simple gathering, with soft music and friendly laughter. Everyone was enjoying themselves. For the first time in months, the street felt warm and welcoming. But Karen watched from her window, her jaw clenched. She could hear their laughter and smell the food. To her, it felt like they were celebrating her defeat. She closed the blinds and sat in darkness, trembling with anger. Later that night, when the gathering ended and everyone went home, Karen went outside quietly. The street was empty. She crossed over to Marcus's house, looking around nervously. She reached his yard and took a photo of his barbecue grill, still sitting on the porch. Then she took photos of the trash bags near his driveway. The next morning, Marcus received another notice from the HOA, stating that he had violated trash disposal rules and backyard regulations. He sighed and went straight to Mr. Lewis with the letter. Mr. Lewis read it and frowned. "Karen again?" Marcus nodded. "Yes, I think so." "This is getting ridiculous," Mr. Lewis shook his head. "You've done nothing wrong. I'll take care of this." He called an emergency HOA meeting to discuss Karen's behavior. Several neighbors attended, including Marcus. When Karen arrived and saw Marcus sitting there, she froze for a moment but then straightened her shoulders proudly. "I see you're still pretending to be the victim," she said sharply. Marcus stayed calm. "I just came to listen." Mr. Lewis cleared his throat. "Karen, we have received multiple complaints from residents about your constant accusations and false reports. We have checked all of them. None were valid." Karen crossed her arms. "So you're siding with him now?" "We are siding with the truth," Mr. Lewis replied firmly. "Marcus has been respectful and cooperative. You have caused unnecessary trouble. "This must stop." Several neighbors nodded. One woman said, "Karen, we've seen you taking pictures of his house at night." "It's not right." Karen's face went red. "I have every right to protect my neighborhood." Mr. Lewis looked tired. "We all want safety, but what you are doing is not protection. It's harassment." Karen's hands shook. She looked around and saw that nobody supported her. Her power in the HOA was slipping away. She pointed at Marcus and shouted, "He's tricked you all. You'll see who he really is." Then she grabbed her bag and rushed out, slamming the door behind her. Marcus stayed seated. He didn't smile or say anything. He didn't want to win an argument. He just wanted peace. After the meeting, Mr. Lewis put a notice on the community board. It stated that false complaints and harassment of any neighbor would not be tolerated. It was clear the message was meant for Karen. For a few days, things were quiet. Karen didn't come out much. The street felt peaceful again. Marcus thought maybe she had finally decided to stop. But inside her house, Karen was still fuming. She sat in her living room, replaying the scene in her head. She felt betrayed by everyone. Even her own son avoided her most of the time now. One evening, Brad came home from work and found her pacing the room. "Mom, you need to calm down," he said softly. "You're making this worse." Karen turned to him. "He humiliated me. Everyone thinks I'm crazy." "Then stop proving them right," Brad said. "Just stop." Karen's eyes filled with tears of anger. "You don't understand. I built this community. I made the rules. And now they all laugh behind my back." Brad shook his head. "Mom, it's not worth it anymore." Karen turned away, refusing to listen. The next morning, something shocking happened. Someone had thrown paint across Marcus's fence during the night. The white wood was now covered with messy red streaks. It looked deliberate. Marcus stood outside staring at it. Several neighbors came out to see what happened. "Who would do this?" one of them asked. Marcus didn't answer. He already had a feeling. He checked his camera footage once again. The recording showed a person wearing a hood walking up to the fence with a bucket and throwing paint before running away. The face wasn't clear, but the body shape looked familiar. When he showed the footage to the police, they said they would investigate. They promised to increase patrols around the area. That evening, when the police visited Karen's house to ask questions, she acted shocked. "Me? Why would I do something like that?" she said. "He probably did it himself to get attention." Brad looked at the ground, unable to meet the officer's eyes. After they left, Karen turned to him angrily. "You didn't say anything, did you?" Brad whispered. "Mom, I saw you go out last night." "I know what you did." Karen froze. "I was just teaching him a lesson." Brad shouted for the first time. "That's not a lesson, Mom, that's wrong. You're destroying yourself." He left the house and didn't come back for the night. Karen sat alone, her hands shaking. The neighborhood lights glowed outside her window, but she felt trapped in darkness. The next morning, she woke up to see police cars outside again. They had found paint on her trash bin that matched the paint on Marcus's fence. They wanted to ask her more questions. Neighbors stood outside, whispering. Some looked at her with pity. Others shook their heads. Karen tried to defend herself, but the officers reminded her that there was evidence. They didn't arrest her, but they warned her that further actions would lead to legal trouble. When they left, Karen broke down in tears. For the first time, she realized how far she had gone. Her son was gone. Her neighbors hated her. Her position in the HOA was lost. That evening, she saw Marcus standing outside fixing his fence. Despite everything, he looked calm. He was not angry. He was not shouting. He was simply repairing what was broken. Something in that moment made Karen feel small. For the first time, she felt guilty. She walked to the window and watched him quietly. She wanted to apologize, but pride held her back. Marcus noticed her standing there. He raised his hand in a small wave. Karen hesitated, then slowly lifted her hand and waved back. It was not much, but it was something. As night fell, the neighborhood grew quiet. Brad came home later, and Karen hugged him without saying a word. For the first time in months, there was silence instead of anger in their house. The day after the meeting, the whole neighborhood seemed different. People who had once smiled at Karen were now avoiding her. Some didn't even greet her when she passed by on her morning walk. She tried to act normal, pretending nothing had happened, but deep inside she was burning with embarrassment. Her son Brad stayed mostly inside, his curtains closed, avoiding the sunlight and the world outside. The video of him stealing packages had spread quietly. whispered about between neighbors and shared in private group chats. Marcus, on the other hand, was trying to move on. He didn't want to create more drama or hold grudges. He kept busy with work, watering his plants and fixing small things around his house. Yet there was still a quiet tension in the air. Some people would stop him to say they were sorry for what happened. Others would tell him how brave he was for standing up for himself. Marcus would just smile and say, "It's fine. I just want peace," but peace was not what Karen wanted. She could not let go of what happened. She kept telling herself that Marcus had humiliated her family on purpose. In her mind, she was the victim. She started writing long emails to the HOA, saying that Marcus was a troublemaker and that his camera was a violation of neighborhood privacy. She even suggested that he should remove it. The HOA board ignored her complaints, saying that security cameras were allowed for personal safety. That only made her angrier. One afternoon, Karen looked out of her window and saw Marcus talking to two neighbors, Mrs. Green and Mr. Patel. They were laughing about something. She watched them closely, wondering what they were saying. Her thoughts filled with jealousy and frustration. She convinced herself that they were laughing at her. She shut her curtains and paced around the living room, breathing heavily. She told Brad, "They are trying to make us look bad. That man wants to ruin our name." Brad didn't reply. He just stared at the floor. He already knew that it was his own fault, but his mother refused to see it. Days passed and Karen became more restless. Every sound outside made her peek through the blinds. Every car that stopped near her house made her suspicious. She had created her own storm and was now trapped inside it. Her mind kept replaying the image of the HOA meeting, the shocked faces and the look of quiet disappointment in her neighbor's eyes. Marcus continued his peaceful routine. He had even started a small community project, planting flowers along the pathway near the park. Many neighbors joined him. The atmosphere around the neighborhood began to brighten. Children played outside again and people smiled more. But one house remained dark and silent, Karen's. One evening, Marcus heard a knock on his door. When he opened it, he was surprised to see Brad standing there. He looked nervous, his hands shaking slightly. "Hey," Brad said quietly. "Can I talk to you?" Marcus nodded and invited him in. They sat down in the living room. Brad took a deep breath before speaking. "I wanted to say sorry. For everything. I messed up. My mom is really upset. She won't talk to anyone and she blames you, but it's not your fault." Marcus listened calmly. "I appreciate that you came here, Brad. That takes courage. I don't hold anything against you. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is how you fix them." Brad looked relieved. "Thanks. I just wanted to do the right thing." He stood up to leave, but then hesitated. "She doesn't know I came here. She wouldn't like it if she found out." Marcus nodded. "Don't worry. I won't say anything." When Brad left, Marcus felt a strange sense of hope. Maybe things would get better. Maybe Karen would finally calm down. But that night, Karen saw her son coming out of Marcus's house through the window. Her heart raced. She felt betrayed. She stormed into Brad's room, her voice shaking. "Why were you at his house? What are you doing with him now?" Brad tried to explain, but she didn't listen. "You are taking his side now?" she shouted. "After everything he did to us?" "He didn't do anything wrong," Brad replied softly. "He just showed the truth." Karen's face turned red. "He embarrassed you in front of everyone. He made us look like criminals." Brad didn't argue anymore. He just sat on his bed staring at the floor. Karen walked out, slamming the door behind her. She felt her anger rise again, stronger than before. She couldn't sleep that night. Her thoughts were filled with revenge and fear. She told herself that Marcus was trying to turn her son against her, that he was manipulating the neighborhood. The next morning, Marcus woke up early and went outside to water his plants. The air was cool and quiet. Birds were singing and the sun was rising behind the trees. He smiled to himself, feeling calm. But as he turned toward his driveway, he froze. There was red paint splashed across his fence. Big letters spelled out the word liar. He sighed, not in anger, but in sadness. He knew who had done it. But instead of calling the police, he simply picked up a brush and started cleaning it. Neighbors saw him and came to help. Within an hour, the fence looked clean again. No one mentioned Karen's name, but everyone knew. Karen watched from her window, biting her lip. She expected him to call the police, to shout, to fight. But he didn't. That made her even more uneasy. The calmness in his actions felt heavier than anger. Later that day, the HOA president, Mrs. Lee, came to Karen's door. "Karen, we need to talk," she said firmly. "This has gone too far. People are upset. We all know what happened with the fence. You need to stop this." Karen's voice trembled. "I didn't do anything," Mrs. Lee sighed. "Karen, everyone deserves peace." "You're not the victim here. Let it go before things get worse." When Mrs. Lee left, Karen sat on her couch in silence. She stared at the floor, her thoughts spinning. For the first time, a small part of her began to question herself. Had she really caused all this? Was she the reason people avoided her now? As night fell, she looked out of the window again. Marcus was sitting on his porch, quietly reading a book. The street was calm. The moonlight fell across the houses, making everything look peaceful. She envied that peace. She wished she could feel it too. But her pride still stood in the way. Brad came out of his room and sat beside her. "Mom," he said softly, "maybe it's time to stop fighting." "He's not against us," Karen didn't answer. She just looked at her son, tears filling her eyes. For a moment, she felt the heavy weight of all the choices she had made. The late-night anger, the gossip, the bitterness. It had only brought her loneliness. She went to bed that night feeling lost, unsure of what to do next. But deep down, something inside her had started to change. She didn't want to admit it yet, but she was tired. Tired of fighting, tired of pretending, tired of being angry. The next morning, when Marcus stepped outside, he found a small note slipped under his door. It said, "I'm sorry for the trouble. Kay." He smiled slightly, folded the paper, and placed it on his desk. It wasn't much, but it was a start. A quiet sign that maybe peace was possible again. The neighborhood was slowly healing. The sun rose brighter that day, and for the first time in weeks, the air felt lighter. People were smiling again, greeting each other, and life was moving forward. And though Karen still stayed mostly inside, something about her had changed. She watched the world outside her window, not with anger anymore, but with reflection. It was the beginning of something new, the first step toward forgiveness, not just for others, but for herself. The next few weeks passed slowly, but something was changing in the neighborhood. The tension that had filled the air for so long was starting to fade. People were talking again, laughing, and enjoying the calm streets. The story of the stolen packages was slowly becoming a thing of the past. Life was returning to normal, but not everyone felt at peace. Inside her house, Karen sat near the window each morning, staring at the street she used to control with her strict rules. She remembered how everyone once respected her. They listened to her at meetings, followed her instructions, and even feared her complaints. But now she felt invisible. People no longer waved when she passed by. They walked their dogs on the opposite side of the road. The silence around her home was louder than any noise she had ever heard. Brad spent most of his time trying to move forward. He had started working part-time at a nearby store, hoping to earn his own money and learn responsibility. He no longer wanted to hide behind his mother's shadow. The talk with Marcus had changed something inside him. He had seen how kindness could break walls that anger only made higher. One afternoon, as Brad came home from work, he saw Marcus outside trimming his plants. He raised his hand in greeting. Marcus smiled and waved back. Karen saw this from the window and turned away, feeling a mix of sadness and pride. Her son was learning to grow up, but she was still trapped in her bitterness. Later that evening, Karen sat at the dining table, staring at her cold cup of tea. She could still remember the note she had left for Marcus. It had taken her hours to write that small apology, and even though she never expected a reply, it had lifted something heavy off her chest. Yet she still couldn't face him. Her pride was strong, but her heart was tired. That night, Karen couldn't sleep. She thought about all that had happened since Marcus moved in. She remembered how she had judged him before even knowing him. She thought about how her anger had made her do things she never imagined she would do. She realized she had blamed everyone else for her own mistakes. For the first time, she whispered to herself, "I was wrong." The next morning, the sky was clear, and the air smelled fresh after a light rain. Marcus was out early again, cleaning the sidewalk near the community park. He had started organizing small cleanup drives to bring people together. Several neighbors had joined him, turning the simple task into a friendly weekend routine. Karen stood by her window watching. She could see how people laughed and worked together. They looked happy. For a moment, she felt a deep ache in her heart. She missed being part of something. She missed the feeling of belonging. She took a deep breath, then stepped away from the window. Brad noticed her pacing around the room. "Mom," he said gently, "you can go out there, you know. No one will stop you." Karen shook her head. "They don't want me there." "You won't know unless you try," Brad replied. "You always told me to face my mistakes. Maybe it's time you face yours too." His words stayed in her mind long after he left the room. She sat there staring at her reflection in the mirror. She saw the worry lines, the tired eyes, and the face of someone who had spent too long fighting battles that didn't need to be fought. She finally whispered, "It's time." An hour later, she opened her door and stepped outside. The soft wind brushed her face. She walked slowly toward the park, her heart pounding. When she reached the edge, Marcus saw her. He paused for a moment, unsure of what to expect. The other neighbors looked too, surprised to see her there. Karen stopped a few steps away. "Hi," she said quietly. Her voice was trembling. "I wanted to thank you." Marcus looked at her kindly. "For what?" "For being patient," she said, "and for not giving up on this neighborhood. I caused a lot of problems. I thought I was protecting everyone, but I was only protecting my pride." Marcus nodded. "It's not easy to admit that, but it means a lot that you did." Karen looked down, trying to hold back tears. "I want to make things right. I don't know how yet, but I want to start." Marcus smiled warmly. "You can start by joining us. We're just planting new flowers along the walkway. There's always room for one more helper." For a moment, Karen hesitated. She could feel everyone's eyes on her, but then she noticed Brad walking toward them, smiling at her with encouragement. She nodded and took a small step forward. Marcus handed her a pair of gloves and a small plant. "Here," he said. "This one needs a careful hand." She knelt down beside the others, pressing her hands into the soft soil. The earth felt cool and alive beneath her fingers. It had been so long since she had done something simple and peaceful. She planted the flower gently, patting the soil around it. When she looked up, Marcus gave her a small nod of approval. As the day went on, Karen started talking with the other neighbors. At first, the conversations were short and awkward, but slowly, they began to smile. Mrs. Green offered her lemonade. Mr. Patel complimented the flowers she planted. The air felt lighter than it had in months. When the sun began to set, everyone stood back to admire the work they had done. The walkway was lined with colorful flowers, each one representing a new beginning for their small community. Karen stood quietly, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace. That night, Karen and Brad sat together on the porch. The sky was glowing with stars, and the sound of crickets filled the air. Brad looked at his mother and said, "You did good today." Karen smiled faintly. "It felt nice," she admitted. "I didn't realize how much I missed being around people." Brad nodded. "You just needed to remember that not everyone is against you." Karen looked at him and said softly, "You were right. I spent so much time being angry that I forgot how to live." Across the street, Marcus was sitting on his porch too, reading a book as usual. He looked up, saw them, and raised his hand in a friendly wave. This time Karen waved back without hesitation. The next few days continued to bring small but meaningful changes. Karen began greeting her neighbors again, not as a rule enforcer, but as a friend. She helped organize the next HOA meeting, where she openly apologized for her past behavior. People were surprised at her honesty, but they respected her for it. For the first time in a long while, the meeting ended with laughter instead of tension. Brad continued to grow more independent. He saved his money and started talking about taking evening classes. Marcus helped him with some advice about budgeting and planning. The bond between the two families slowly grew stronger. built not on anger, but on forgiveness and understanding. One afternoon, Karen stood in her garden, looking at the flowers she had planted. Their bright colors reminded her of that day at the park. She smiled, realizing that the garden was not just growing outside, but inside her as well. A few children ran past her house, laughing as they played. One of them accidentally dropped a ball near her fence. The boy looked nervous, unsure if he should go near her yard. Karen picked up the ball and handed it back with a smile. "Be careful next time," she said kindly. The boy grinned and ran off, calling, "Thank you, ma'am." It was a small moment, but it made her heart warm. It showed that people could change and that forgiveness was real. By the time summer arrived, the neighborhood had fully healed. The flowers along the park were blooming beautifully, and the community had never been closer. Marcus's calm nature had inspired many, and Karen's change had surprised everyone. She was no longer the strict, angry woman people whispered about. She had become someone who listened, helped, and smiled. One evening, during the community's annual picnic, Marcus stood up to say a few words. "We've all learned something this year," he began. "That kindness is stronger than anger, and forgiveness can change everything. We are all neighbors, and that means we take care of one another." Everyone clapped, and Karen smiled. She felt tears in her eyes, not of sadness, but of gratitude. She looked around at the people who had once feared her and now welcomed her. She looked at her son, who was laughing with friends, free from guilt and shame. She looked at Marcus, who had shown her what patience truly meant. As the sun went down and the streetlights came on, Karen felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: belonging. The mistakes of the past no longer held her back. She had faced them, learned from them, and grown beyond them. From that day on, whenever a new neighbor moved into the area, Karen was the first to greet them with a smile and a plate of cookies. The woman who once called the police over small problems had become a symbol of change and understanding. Her story reminded everyone that people could grow, that peace could return even after conflict, and that sometimes the best apology was simply showing you've changed. The neighborhood that had once been divided was now filled with unity, laughter, and hope. And in the middle of it all stood Karen, not as the old Karen everyone feared, but as someone new, someone who had finally learned what it meant to live in peace.